Today we're going to take a look at Zoom, how to set up your own meeting, how to use the application, and just general best practices and things about the program. So to begin, I'm going to log into case.edu/Zoom, which is our landing page for accessing Zoom. So when I go here, I'm going to be asked to sign in. Now they do have other buttons here, usually helpful if you're trying to quickly join or host a meeting, but to create a room, we're going to actually click sign in, which is the third button listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. It's going to ask me to sign in with my case ID and password like always. And then you might see this next screen. It's going to ask if you want to see the screen again. This is a new security feature that UTech has put into our single sign-on service. Generally, you can select Never Ask Me Again and then click Continue. I'm going to keep it here, Ask Me Again next at login, because I want to show this as a demo in the future. So go ahead and select your option and then click Continue when you're ready. Once that goes through, you will be brought into Zoom. So this is what you see. Along the left-hand side of the page here, we have our Zoom menu. And then on the right here, we have the different areas and settings that we can take a look at. So the first area that we have here is the profile. The profile, not much to change here or to look at. The one thing I want to highlight is the ability to add a profile picture. I like to do this because if you don't start your camera up, but you join a Zoom meeting, your profile picture will show instead. So at least then your participants can see who they're working with and who's speaking, even if you don't have your camera on. So all I'm going to do is click the change button here. It's going to ask me to upload a picture, and I can go find my picture. And you can drag the little bounding box here to change the dimensions of that and select what region of that picture you want to use. And then I'm going to click Save. So there we have it. I have my profile picture all set up. And I'm ready to go. That way if I join a meeting, I don't have my camera on, people will still be able to see my picture there. Up next on the left of the screen, we have this section called Meeting Settings. I will say that this section looks very, very overwhelming, and it is. There's lots of options available here. There's only a few you probably want to look at, and that is completely optional. You don't have to turn these things on, and most of these by default are fine. There are a couple you might want to look at, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here. The first one we're going to take a look at is this one for polling. If you want to use polling in your meeting rooms, so you can ask multiple choice or I think true and false questions as well. I know multiple choice for sure. You can set that up here. So you can turn that option on by just clicking this little toggle on or off, and I'm going to keep mine turned on. Further on down here, you have additional options you might want to turn on. I also like this nonverbal feedback one. Nonverbal feedback is a bunch of icons that students can click on that says go faster, go slower, I like this, I don't like this, and it's just little pictures that pop up next to their names. It doesn't interrupt the class or do anything like that, but it's a great indicator so you can say, hey everybody, give me a thumbs up if you're following along, and they can do that. So nice little thing, I like to keep that turned on. The other one you might want to take a look at is the breakout room option here. So if you plan on using breakout rooms, which are smaller individual rooms within your main Zoom room, you can turn that option on here. The final thing you might want to take a look at, or you might need to turn on depending on how your class goes, is the closed caption option here. Closed captioning is a tool that you can turn on in Zoom. Zoom does not automatically provide closed captioning. So if you want someone to provide captions, you will need to assign somebody to type them. Generally, this would be through a third-party vendor who would work with the Office of Student Affairs or your disability office to work through and get that figured out. So UTech does not provide that. Zoom does not provide that. You would need to work with your department to get that all sorted out. There's a bunch of other options here, like I mentioned. If you want to turn them on or off, you can just by clicking on the little toggle switch. But generally, the defaults are fine, so we're going to go ahead and skip all the rest. Up at the top of the page, you'll see this recording tab. I just want to point out in here that there's an option that says record the gallery view. You probably want to leave that set to on. That way, if you are recording your meeting rooms, which we'll talk about a little later, you're capturing all of the participants in there and not just the active speaker, which is also an option. But just like to double check that just to make sure it's still on. Okay, so that's the first two things on our menu over here. The next one is this meetings button. And this is where we go to schedule our meetings. So I've clicked on meetings. You see this schedule a new meeting button up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And when this comes up, it's going to ask us for our meeting details. So the first thing it wants is a topic for our meetings. So maybe this is for my class. Whatever it is, you can go ahead and give it a more specific name. There's an optional description here. It doesn't really show up to anybody, so I'm just going to skip it. It's not super helpful. Next up, we have our duration. So if this is a meeting that you are holding once and you know the specific date and time when it's happening, you can go ahead and put that here. That comes in handy when you get an invitation email for this, so then you can send it to your participants and they'll see the date and time for the meeting. Sometimes though, you don't have just one meeting, right? You might have recurring meetings. So you can select that option down here below. And when you do that, it asks you, how often does this meeting happen? Daily, so you're meeting every day of the week, or every other day, or whatever it might be. You can do weekly meetings, or if you have a monthly meeting, you can set that up as well. My favorite option here is the no fixed time option, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. And when I do, you'll notice that all of those date settings just disappeared. The reason for that is Zoom is, or you're telling Zoom rather, that my meeting doesn't have a fixed time. You know, I'm not meeting every day, I'm not meeting every month. Maybe I'm meeting, you know, on a Thursday this week and on Tuesday the next week, and maybe we'll go a month without meeting and then we'll meet again on a Friday. There's no fixed schedule for my meetings. The benefit of doing it this way is that you can reuse that meeting link over and over and over again. So if you want to put this link in your syllabus for office hours, or you have a regular class meeting or something like that, this would be a great way to do that. So I'm going to keep this set to no fixed time, and then we'll talk about the other options down below here. So our next option here is registration. You probably don't want to turn this on. Registration requires that you have your participants sign up for the meeting before it begins. Generally, that's used for like webinars and that kind of stuff, so we're just going to skip that. The next options here are kind of important, and I like to keep them set to where they are by default. So the video option there is asking if you want the host and participant video cameras to be on by default or off by default. Now, no matter what you select here, when a host or a participant comes into your meeting room, they will be able to turn their camera on and off and manage all of that. This setting is just saying when they first come in, should their camera be on or off. I like to keep this set to off. That way, if you come into the meeting and you need to settle your laptop down or make sure the lighting is right, or you have something in the background you need to clean up before you turn your camera on, you have that option. If you turn this on, the minute that the participant or the host joins the room, their camera will be on and you can see them immediately. Not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it can cause troubles, so I like to keep that set to off. Under that, we have the audio setting. You see telephone and computer audio, and then you have telephone and computer audio. Keep it set to telephone and computer audio. That way, if a student needs to join with their computer, they can, but if they have issues with it, or if they need to join with their phone, they can do that as well. So either way, they'll be able to hear, and they have two options for figuring that out. Okay. Under that, we have a bunch of other meeting options. Most of these are optional. You don't have to turn them on. You can set up a password so people have to put the password in before they can join the meeting. You can do enable join before host. I like this option. What that lets you do is it lets your participants join the meeting before you join it. This is kind of beneficial, especially if you might be running late or you want to give them some time to get in and set up before you are there. If you don't turn this on and a participant tries to join, they'll get a little pop-up message that says the host has not yet joined. They kind of put them in a waiting pattern. Once the host does join, they'll then be able to join the Zoom room. But until the host joins, they'll just be sitting there. So, as such, I like to turn that option on, let the participants get in there, get set up, get ready to go before I join. There's also an option here to mute participants upon entry. I like to turn that one on too. Kind of the same thing with that camera option above. If you don't turn this on and someone joins the room, their microphone will be on immediately. Not necessarily a bad thing, but this is how you kind of get all the background noise and people coughing and dogs barking and maybe people saying stuff they shouldn't because they don't realize they're not on the mic or their mic's not live. So I like to turn this option on. This personal meeting ID, not really relevant for most cases, so I'm just going to skip that. And then there's an option to record the meeting automatically. I don't recommend that, only because the first couple minutes of a meeting are generally just people sitting there, and you don't need that in your recording. Finally here we have an alternative host box. If you want to add an alternative host, you can put their email address in there. If you're going to put their case email address in, you should use their abc123@case.edu format email address, and you'll be able to add them as an alternative host. So now that I have this created, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And when I do that, I'm brought to this meeting detail page. So here I see all of my meeting details. The important piece, though, is this join URL. So this URL is what I can send to my participants, and then they click on that to join the meeting when it's ready. I also will receive an email with this information to my case email inbox, my webmail inbox. Takes maybe 10 minutes to show up there, but it will show up there, and then I can take that email and forward it to my users. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this link, and I'm going to send it to my participants, and then we will join the Zoom room. All right, so I went ahead and sent that link out to my participants, and while I give them a couple of minutes to join the meeting, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about other settings here. So if we scroll up and we click on meetings again, you will notice that we now have a meeting listed here. And it says that the start time is recurring, and that's what we set up. And you'll see the topic here, and that's what I put in. And I just wanted to take a sec to point out how you can get those meeting details again if you leave that page that we were just on, or if you need to grab the link again, or if someone needs to be added, or you need to make a setting change, or whatever it might be. You have the option here to do that. So to get that information back, I'm going to click on My Class here, which is the topic that I put in, and we are brought back to that same details page. So I still have that link that I can grab. If I need to make any changes to that meeting, I can click Edit this meeting, and I can go and put a password on, or change the date or time, or whatever I might need to do. So you can get back to this page, and you can still edit your meetings. I also want to take a quick sec to point out if you are adding polls to your room, this is where you can add polls. It's much easier to set up a poll beforehand than to set it up on the fly in the Zoom room. So if you do want to add a poll, this is where you can do that. I'm not going to go into that. Not everybody uses polling, and it's a pretty easy tool to figure out. Zoom has documentation on that, and we can certainly help you as well get that set up if you're interested. So I've given my participants a few minutes to go ahead and get into the meeting, and now I'm going to go ahead and start my meeting. So I clicked on Meetings, I've logged into Zoom here, I see this Join button, and I can go ahead and click on that to join my meeting. You can also join the meeting if you're on that detail page by clicking Start This Meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now when I do that, you're going to be prompted, if you have not joined Zoom before, you'll be prompted to download and run Zoom. It'll do a quick little download. You click to install it. That'll install and then open up the meeting real quick. Since I've already been in Zoom before, I see this little pop-up that's saying, are you sure you want to open Zoom? Yep, I'm sure, so I'm going to go ahead and click Open Zoom Meetings. What that's going to do is it's going to launch Zoom on my computer and then open up that meeting. So we'll give that a second to come up. All right, we just saw that little pop-up. That's the Zoom application, which is running in the background of my computer. All right, and here's our Zoom meeting. So in our Zoom meeting room here, we are first presented with this pop-up window that says, hey, you need to join your audio to this room. And by doing that, that's how people will hear you and how you can hear them. So you have two options here. You can join by your computer audio. And if you do that, we recommend clicking this Test Computer Mic and Speakers button, which will let you select which speakers you're using, which mic you're using, and to test those to make sure that your inputs are going. So here, for example, we can see my microphone is working because the little bar is moving up and down. So you can change those settings if you need to. If you want to join with a telephone instead, there's an option here for phone call. And all you do for that is dial in the information. It'll ask you for the meeting ID and you type that in. And then it will also ask you for a participant ID and you can enter that as well. Most people though, I think, join with their computer audio. So I'm gonna go ahead and click to join with my computer audio. So I'm just gonna click this big old Join Audio Conference by Computer button. And there we go, it says I'm using the computer audio. At this point, we can run through the options along the Zoom meeting window. So the first thing you'll notice is that I have a menu bar along the bottom. And if I don't move my mouse for a minute, it might disappear. Yep, there we go, it's gone. To get that menu bar back, you just gotta move your mouse a little bit and it'll jump right back up. So let's run through the buttons along the bottom here. The first button we have is this unmute and mute button. So right now it says unmute and you see this little microphone with a slash through it. Since I selected that option to mute participants upon entry, I am muted right now. If I need somebody to hear me, so I'm presenting to my class or I'm sharing my ideas, whatever it might be, I need to unmute myself so people can hear me. So to do that, I'm just going to click on this unmute button and you'll see that it's turned into the mute button. You can tell that I'm talking because the little green indicator is going up and down. And then up at the top here, it says talking and then my name. So we can see what is happening and we know who is talking. If you need to mute yourself, you just go ahead and click on that button and you'll notice it now says mute. And when you click on that, you're now muted, so people can't hear you again. Up next is our video button. That pretty much behaves the exact same way. Since I had both of those options set to off when we set up our meeting, I came in, my camera was not on automatically. If I want to start sharing my camera, I can do that by clicking the Start Video Camera button. And that will go ahead and launch up my camera. Hey there. You can see me in my recording glory here. We also have participant view in this. So when you're sharing your camera, you can see the other people in your meeting. But you don't have to necessarily share your camera to see that information. So I'm actually going to go ahead and stop my video by clicking the Stop Video button down here. And if you want to see who else is in that meeting room with you, you can click on this Manage Participants button down below. So when I do that, let me resize my window here a little bit. When we do that, we have a list of everybody else who is in the room with me. So here I can see I have Genevieve and Rachel in this meeting, and I can see who the host of the meeting is and who's just a participant based off of the little indicator next to their name. So in Zoom, there are different roles. You have a host, and you can only have one host per meeting. The host is the all-powerful user in the room who can pretty much do anything. Underneath that, you have a co-host, and a co-host can share their screen and manage other people's audio. So if you need to mute somebody or do anything like that, they can do that. And then you have a participant, and a participant can't do much at all. They can share their screen, or I'm sorry, they cannot share their screen. Actually, I take that back. They can share their screen, but only if that option's turned on. They can turn on their camera and turn on their microphone and talk and converse and type messages in the chat and participate, but they can't make any changes to the meeting or do any of that. If you need to change the role of somebody, you can select their name from the participants list, and you'll see this More option here. And when that shows up, you have an option to make them a host, make them a co-host, or if they have a co-host or host status, you can bump them back down to participant. So I'm going to go ahead and make Genevieve here a co-host, and it's going to ask me, am I sure? Sure. And now I can see next to her name that she's a co-host. If I ever needed to mute somebody or stop their camera for some reason, I can do that by clicking on mute or unmute next to their name, or under the More option, I can also ask them to start their video or stop their video if I ever needed to do that. So the participants list lets you manage that kind of stuff. Along the bottom here, you also have our nonverbal feedback indicators. So if you want your students to give you a thumbs up or say yes or no, or go slower, go faster, they can click on those there, and those will show up next to their name in the participants list. Okay, so that's the participants list in all its glory there. I do want to take a quick second to point out these buttons along the bottom. So that's how you can easily mute and unmute everybody. But you might also see a button down there that says Claim Host. If you see that button, you probably want to click it, and it will ask you to log in. When that comes up, I'm not sure I can replicate it right now, but you'll see a little pop-up window that asks you to log in, and you can enter in your email address on the left. Or on the right, there's an option to sign in with single sign-on. If you do that, that's what you want to select, single sign-on, and it's going to ask you for a domain. So you'll just type in CWRU for Case Western Reserve University, and when you click next, it'll ask you to do your single sign-on, your normal ABC123, and your password. So if you see that Claim Host button, make sure you click on it. That way you are the host and you have all the powers in the room. Otherwise, you're just a participant and you don't have much ability to share or do any of that. Okay, so that's our participants list. We can toggle that on and off by clicking on the Manage Participants button down at the bottom. So if I click on that, it'll go away. Then if I click on it again, it'll come back. I did skip over the Invite button. The only benefit of the Invite button is that you can copy the URL right here, which will copy the URL to your clipboard. You can then paste that, so if you needed to invite somebody last minute or send them an email or whatever it might be, you can do it that way. All right, so our next button here is the polling button. As I already mentioned, I'm not going to go into the polling option here. It's pretty straightforward. We do recommend setting up the polls beforehand if you plan on using polling. But you would click on the poll button here to open the poll, get the results, share the results, all that kind of stuff. All right, so our next button here is our screen share button. And when we click on that, that will let us share our screen. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And when this window comes up, it's going to ask you, what do you want to share? So it's going to give you your desktop by default, which is your computer screen and everything you see on it. That includes your desktop, any open applications you might have, your start menu, all of that kind of stuff. You can do a whiteboard if you want to take some notes or do something with your class. You can also select individual programs that you have open. So if I just want to share what I have in Chrome, I can select my Chrome window here and only share that. If you plan on skipping between applications, so maybe you have a couple of documents pulled up that you want to share, we recommend sharing your desktop. That way you can seamlessly switch between them and your users will be able to see that. A word of caution, if you're sharing your desktop, that means individuals can see everything. So if you have any personal information, confidential information, stuff you generally wouldn't want to share, take it off your desktop, or make sure when you're sharing your screen you don't actually show your desktop. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and select my desktop here and click Share Screen. And when I do that, right now all you see is my Chrome window, because that is what I'm sharing right now. or what I have pulled up on my screen right now, rather. You'll also notice that the Zoom meeting room has disappeared into this bar along the top of the page. I can click and drag that to anywhere that I deem it comfortable on my screen for me to see it, but generally I like to keep it up at the top. That way it's out of the way. When I take my mouse off of that, you'll notice it just collapsed, even into a smaller version of itself. That really lets me maximize the screen and make any changes or show or share what I need to. To get that back, all you have to do is put your cursor on it and it comes back, and then you can unmute yourself or start your video or check the chat or whatever you need to do. Anyways, so I'm sharing my screen currently. If I minimize this Chrome window, you will now be able to see my whole desktop. And that is because I'm sharing my entire desktop. Now that being said, I can actually go in and show you my start menu, and I can start up a whole new program and start doing stuff in there, which is convenient if that's what you want to do. But if you're not aware of the fact that you're sharing your entire desktop, you might get into some trouble there. So if you have any, again, confidential or personal information on there that you don't want people to see, either make sure you don't minimize to your desktop and you keep a program open all the time so that your users can only see a program. So here I have a notepad that takes up the whole screen. That's all they're going to see. Just make sure you're aware of that, I guess. Okay. When you are ready to stop sharing, you can go ahead and hover over the menu bar at the top to get the menu back, and then you will click the Stop Share button. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward there. So I'm going to stop sharing, and when I do, my Zoom meeting pops back up here. I have access to it again, and I can continue to run through the tools here so we can take a look at those. The next button here we have is our chat button. Clicking on that lets you chat with people in the room, so you can send a message to everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and send a message out and see if anybody types back. You can also send a private message if you wish. To do that, you can select to everyone, and instead of everyone, you can select the individual that you wish to message. So I can send a message just to Genevieve and say, I don't know, hope your day is going well, or something like that. Okay, I can see that it's private because it's got this big old red privately next to it. When Genevieve, or if Genevieve were to respond back, it would also be marked privately coming back to me. To switch back to everyone, I can just click on the option here and select that. Yeah, so that's the chat. Pretty straightforward, nothing too fancy there. There is an option on that meeting settings page that we first started with to turn off the chat for your meeting rooms. We don't recommend doing that. Reason being, if you are having technical issues in your room and someone can't connect their microphone, or their phone is not working, or whatever it might be, they have no other way to communicate with you than in the chat. So keeping that option on lets them communicate, ask questions, not interrupt the class, troubleshoot, whatever it might be. There's also an option in that meeting settings page to allow a file transfer in your chat. To do that, it's under this More button, and you can send files that way. I did not turn that option on, but I just like to point that out. Okay, so that's our chat area. Just like the participants list, you can click on that to toggle it on and off using the button down below. Our next button here is the option to record, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And when I do, you see two settings here. You can record on the computer or record to the cloud. I'm going to record to the cloud. Doing that makes your recordings available to anybody with the link to your recording, so it's very easy to share that. So I'm going to go ahead and click record to the cloud. If you were to record to the computer, it's not the end of the world. You just have to figure out where to put that file, so on YouTube or host it online somewhere. More hassle than it's worth. When I'm recording, you'll see this little recording bar show up in the top corner. That lets me pause or stop my recording. So when I'm ready to stop, I can click stop, and that recording will be processed. The final option here is breakout rooms. I'm not going to go into breakout rooms in too much detail, only because not everybody uses them. But if you do select breakout rooms, you have the option to select how many rooms you want to create, and then if you want to automatically or manually assign everybody. I'm going to manually assign people and then create my rooms here. And here we have the 2 breakout rooms listed. To put people into those breakout rooms, I just click the Assign button, and then I select who goes where. When I'm ready for the breakouts to begin, I click Open All Rooms, and the users will be given a little pop-up that says you've been invited to join a breakout room. They click that, they can join. Genevieve just joined, for example, and she's in there. If I need to broadcast a message to everyone, so 5 minutes is left, I can click on this broadcast message button, type it in, and send that to them. If I want to go join a room, I can click on the join button here and I can go to that breakout room and kind of monitor what's going on. And then when I'm ready to end breakout rooms, I just click this close all rooms button, and that will give everybody 60 seconds to come back into the main Zoom room. All right, so the final thing that we have here is our End Meeting button. Clicking that will end the meeting. And when you do that, you'll see this little pop-up that says, do you want to end the meeting for everybody, or do you just want to leave the meeting? If you end the meeting for everyone, all of your participants and co-hosts and everybody else will see the meeting room close, and that'll be it. If you leave the meeting, someone will randomly be assigned host unless you promote them to host. And they will be able to continue the meeting without you. So generally you want to end the meeting for all, and that'll close the breakout room, or the entire Zoom room, sorry. Before I do that, I just remembered I wanted to show you one last thing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera back on by clicking the Start Video button down at the bottom here. So there I am again, hi. When you are showing your video off, you have a couple different ways you can look at this. So the first way is what they call gallery view, where everybody has an equally sized rectangle. And the active speaker, or the last person to speak, will be highlighted with a big green box. So if I turn my mic on, hopefully my box will turn green. There we go. So I'm the active speaker. You can see it's me. You can change this view, so everybody has an equally sized box now, but if you prefer to see the active speaker as the largest picture, you can do that. By clicking on the Speaker View button at the top of the page. So clicking that, we see our active speaker, or the last active speaker. In this case, it's not going to show me as the largest because I don't want to see myself the biggest. That's a little distracting. But I can see Genevieve was the last to speak. She has the biggest camera here, and then everyone else is listed along the top. Once you get more than about 4 to 5 people, this list at the top gets really, really long, and you'll have to use arrows to navigate it. If you want to see everybody at once, I recommend keeping it in the gallery view. You can see up to 25 cameras at once, all on the one screen. So there we go there. The other option up here is the full screen button. Clicking on that, full screen zoom. And this looks a little strange on my computer due to the way that I'm recording the video, but basically everything is up and large and big and in charge here. If I click to show the chat or the participants, it's going to open up in a little small pop-up window. I can close that to get rid of it, and then if I need to get it back, I can click on the buttons along the bottom to do that. To exit full screen mode, you can hit the escape key on your keyboard, or there is a little full screen button in the top right corner that you unfortunately can't see right now. So I'm going to hit the escape key on my keyboard to close that out. Okay, so I'm ready to stop sharing my meeting. I'm done. Adios. Everybody's been a great participant, great productive session. I'm going to go ahead and click the End Meeting button and then End Meeting for All. And there we go. So ending the meeting for all, close that Zoom meeting room, and it's just left me with what's on my computer. Now let's take a look real quick about how I can go and get my recording. So I recorded a little bit of my meeting there. I recorded it to the cloud. And how do I get that? So I'm going to go ahead and go back to case.edu/Zoom. There we go. And I'm going to click that sign in button again. Okay. And then along the left here, we left off on meetings, right? Right underneath that, we have the option for recordings. So when I click on that, you can see I have some recordings here, including the one from my class, which I did today. If I click on that link, I'm then taken to my recording where I can get the information to share for this. So I can go ahead and click the share button here. It gives me a link, and then I can copy and paste this out to my users or whoever I want to see this. Okay, if I ever wanted to download that as well, I could do that, or if I just want to view it right here in my window, I can do that. But that's where you find your recordings. Okay. That's about it for Zoom. We took a look at how to create a meeting, how to put some profile settings on there, how to look at meeting settings, all those great meeting options once you're in a meeting, and then how to find your recordings. So if you have any questions or concerns, you need help, Zoom's not working right, whatever it might be, we are here to help. You can contact the UTech service desk at 368-HELP or at help.case.edu for 24/7 support in how to use Zoom. Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know if you need any help or have any questions.